once again, they don't have the technology to wipe people's memories yet. They can't do the light, Men in Black thing yet. Once they can
Yeah.
do that, I guess they'll be able to, get people to call it whatever they want. But sorry.
Um, that is, it is amazing. I mean, we went through this naming rights thing, and now, I mean, we even have it in college football, naming rights. But
Sure.
it works a little different.
I mean, every
It,
single one of the bowls has some sort of name sponsor nowadays.
yeah, but other than I mean, other than the Rose Bowl, I mean, who plays in the Capital One Bowl and where is it?
I'm going back to the Rose Bowl. So the Rose Bowl still doesn't have a name sponsor yet, huh?
Uh, I think the Rose Bowl is one of those things. Even if it had a name sponsor, it would still be the Rose Bowl.
Right. I guess you're right. But yeah, all the
Just like, I mean,
Tostitos, you've got,
yeah,
you've got,
you have everyone. You have everyone, but Morton Salt. I mean,
yes, there you go.
you just think of it. I mean, when you think of Division A, Division One, Double A, you know, what used to be Division Two. I mean, so yeah, um, it could be very interesting. Like these naming rights things. But
Yeah. Well, I'm just waiting
well,
for when the players, through maximizing NIL go that way, where it's like, I'm so and so, um, I'm the, what's
Le,
it called?
Le, LeBron,
What's the
LeBron,
product of making
LeBron,
up? Oh, but think
LeBron
about this. Like,
Arena.
you could be like the Trojans condom starting center for the Stanford Cardinals, right? Right? You could
See,
sell the naming rights to your starting position. You could sell the naming rights. I mean, all kinds of things because there's already some endowed position coaching, right? So Andrew Luck now endows the offensive coordinator position at Stanford. So if you look it up on the Stanford website, it's the Andrew, whatever his middle initial is, Luck Foundation offensive coordinator at Stanford University. Look it
okay.
up.
Yeah,
So it's only a matter of time till somebody is like the Valtrex, defensive coordinator at UCLA or whatever it is. I mean, why not do it up? Everybody should sell their naming rights to everything.
hmm. That's. I mean, it's a good idea, and it seems to be working for some people, some more than others. But like you said, just because you sell the naming rights, it does not
Oh yeah, people
always
won't
mean that.
remember it.
Yeah, yeah, you know. But wow, uh, wish I had remembered that the naming rights to King James the Third. Hmm, okay, let's see how far we can go with that one.
There you go.
And, yeah, we'll. I'm pretty sure it'll still be called the Bible, but we'll see. Um, Speaking of the NBA, let's stick there because the Nets. Uh, you know, uh, Looking at them the other day, Steph Curry dropped 37 on them, and they had KD and James Harden without flat Earth. Do you think that they might be asking James Harden to do a little too much? Because I mean, does that mean that he has to ball hog from KD, who is the real star? But you're expecting at least what 28 and 12 or 28 and 8 at least.
I know we've discussed this team many, many, many times. At each time, I've said various versions of the same thing about how I do not buy this team. I do not trust this team. I do not believe in this team. Um, I can't remember all the different ways I've told you this. Uh, Healthy, I definitely, even healthy, I wasn't a buyer, as you might remember, and not healthy. I mean, I'm not going to like the team better, not healthy. So no, without World B flat, they clearly are going to have ball distribution issues, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. Amongst other things, they all want the ball, but the difference is that World B flat, whatever his other flaws, will distribute the rock. He's not a great assist man. I think he's about 4.7, average per game for his career, which is not. It's lower than you'd expect, basically, for a guy as talented and skilled as he is. But nonetheless, he shares the rock. Obviously, amongst the things that I have often criticized about James Harden is, it's once the ball goes in, it often does not come back out. And Kevin Durant is, despite what Steph Curry is doing, still the most difficult all-around matchup in basketball offensively is Kevin Durant. If you can't put a big man on it, despite the fact that he's 6'10" and 3/4 or whatever. I mean, with extremely long arms. I mean, he feels almost like a 7-footer. He's 6'10" and change, and with ludicrous length. He can score every way that a basketball can be scored. I mean, he can post you up. He doesn't do it often, but he can. He can score off the dribble. He can come off of screens. He can, hang in the corner. He can score off of putbacks even. I mean, he's not a devastating interior player, but he's gotten stronger over the years. He can hang around in there and get points that way as well. The team's problems aren't centered around Kevin Durant. The team's problems center around the aforementioned Mr. Flat, and obviously, the fact that you're often playing 4.5 or 4-on-5 or wherever you want to put it, because Harden still only gives defensive effort when the mood strikes him, when the spirit moves him, and it tends to be occasionally in the playoffs. But in the regular season, you might as well just, tell him to just hang near midcourt, save your energy, because for all that he gives you on the defensive end. Like I said, I've told you before, I didn't trust this team. I didn't believe in this team. I said it every different way I could say it. I didn't believe in this team when they were called the Houston Rockets. So I'm not going to start believing wherever James Harden goes, and he's a dominant part of the team. That's a team I'm going to not be a buyer, right? I've made that so very, very clear.
Wow. Is that James's mother on the phone? No. Okay. No.
He's a supremely talented scorer. I mean, he is. But at some point, you need more if you're going to win championships.
If I think the resume kind of speaks for itself. OKC with 2 devastating other players. Houston, where he was supposed to be the man. And now part of the big 3 with the Nets, and all below expectations.
Yep.
I can get you to the dance, but somebody else has to dance with you.
Yep. I mean, the closest they've ever gotten, and I don't think it's a coincidence, was the team OKC, with the in Oklahoma City, where he was the least ball dominant, right? That was the team where more than half of that season he came off the bench. I don't think it's a coincidence that that's the farthest that team. I mean, they made it farther than any of the other teams he's been on since.
Yeah, I hadn't even taken that one into consideration.
I did,
but let's on the other side. Let's talk about Steph and the Warriors. They're still without. I think they're 2 most important pieces As a matter of fact, I was able the other day, just like I was talking during Saturday's show about the winners, how guys throw guys on the waiver wire and think that nobody's looking, and I was able to pick up Clay Thompson because he's on IR. Hmm. Okay. Well, hey, I can stand losing for a month or so to get Clay Thompson back and pair
Oh
him up
yeah.
with Joel Embiid. I have no problem with that, even though
Yep.
they're both out right now. But hey, but but let's talk about those pieces that are missing from the Warriors. The young man that a lot of us talked about last season, Mr. Wiseman, is out
Yep.
along with Clay. What do you predict for this team once they get those two pieces back?
Well, I mean, uh, this is one of the best teams in basketball. Like, this is not a breaking news story. We won't need to cut into the evening news with this one, or interrupt your dinner or whatever. They're going to work those guys in slowly. They're not going to just throw them out there. Clay is getting very close. Supposedly, he's practicing close to
Yeah,
full out.
they say he's back to doing 5-on-5s.
Yep. And I am not quite. I don't think Weidman's quite that far along, but I don't. I'd have to go
No,
check recently. But
not yet.
yeah. But in either case, we're talking about players that will probably initially be coming off the bench. So think about that, right? Think about think about being able to bring those two off the bench and a couple of days. Well, I mean, in the case of Thompson, probably a couple of days from now he'll start coming off the bench. And in the case of Weissman, probably maybe a couple of weeks. You're going to slowly work those players in, at least in part because you've got really, really, really good chemistry with the five that you're playing right now. It just doesn't make sense to suddenly say, okay, we're going to, mess with that initially. At some point, you're going to work those guys back in to the starting rotation, but there's no reason to rush it. If you are basically an unstoppable killing machine now, it logically it doesn't make sense to just start futzing with that. But in a couple of months, because the basketball season it's not quite as interminably long obviously as baseball, but it's long. So let's just flash forward a couple of months. Let's talk about the third week of January, pending somebody getting re-injured or some sort of setback. By the third week in January, we're talking about a team that can take all the guys that have been starting now. Steph Curry obviously will probably retain his starting position, but they'll be able to now have mixed in, right? Klay Thompson, who at one point was a top 20 player in the league. Wiseman's obviously not that far now, not far yet, but he has the potential to get into that, you know, he could get into the top 40, 50 discussion if he keeps progressing, but you have the ability to have a top 3 or 4 player. You're adding in, mixing in, right, for flavor, basically, a top 10 to 15 player in the league, and all those other pieces that have been playing so very well without Klay Thompson. Obviously, things happen. Things can still continue to happen. But assuming they're able to avoid other significant injuries, that should be this team's a handful. I can't see that changing. This should be a very difficult team to beat. If they don't make a fairly deep playoff run, it will be a surprise to me.
Oh, most definitely. And let's talk about the Lakers. I think Giannis comes in the other night and establishes who is the big man between him and AD. They come out a fairly close game until I believe the fourth quarter, and then the dominance of the Bucks was kind of felt. Or maybe it was just the old legs. We've talked time and time again about the age of the Lakers, but you know, I look at the two big men, Giannis and AD. And talent wise, I don't see a lot of separation. As a matter of fact, talent wise, AD might be the better player.
I'm going to disagree with you, but okay.
No,
I think
but
he's the more
but
polished. I think he's the
okay,
more polished of the two. But the more
okay.
talented, no.
Well, my point being is right now, I think that the only thing that separates the two is mental attitude.
Again,
Giannis,
I've seen
Giannis.
Giannis. Have you ever watched Giannis play soccer? This
No,
seven
I
foot
have not.
whatever man. Have you watched him play soccer?
No, I have not.
I would suggest you do so, and then come back to me about who's the more athletically talented.
Well, no,
It's crazy what he can do at that. It's
well,
crazy.
I didn't say who was the most athletic now, but I'm talking about as far as the game of basketball. And maybe you might be right because you judge talent. That's what you do. But looking at it as a fan, and maybe with a little bit of prejudice because I'm not a Laker fan, but I think that
Sure.
right now Giannis just wants it more. I mean, look at what he did last night in the fourth quarter. I mean, did you see AD in the fourth quarter? I mean,
Yeah.
last
Well,
night.
now here's what I will say. Once again, he's certainly the better conditioned of the two. Now that's what you want to discuss. There's a discussion to be had. Anthony Davis is in good enough shape to play basketball at a fairly high level. Giannis is the best conditioned big man in basketball by a significant margin. If you were just to take all the big men in basketball and say, let's have a 5-mile run, Giannis smokes them. Nobody's within 7 or 8 seconds of him. He is the best conditioned big man in the game, period. And it's not particularly close.
That's a hell of a statement.
Well,
Okay,
once again, growing up playing
so
soccer probably plays into it also, right?
so
So these other guys, like Anthony Davis, he grew up playing basketball. Giannis came to basketball a little later, but grew up playing soccer. What do you do in soccer, James?
you run.
How many timeouts, how many breaks are there in soccer? Very few is the answer. You're basically running for over an hour with very little breaks. So you grow up playing a sport where you just run and run and run and run.
Well, maybe he played goalie.
He's better conditioned.
I said maybe he just played goalie.
What?
Maybe he just played goalie.
I've seen him play soccer. He didn't just play goalie. Once again, go to your YouTube, go to your whatever it is, and just Google Giannis Antetokounmpo soccer and see what I'm talking about. Anthony Davis is a very fine basketball player. In fact, he's a great basketball player. Very fine is I shouldn't have said that. It's disrespectful. He's a great basketball player. And I don't doubt his desire one teeny iota. But he's nowhere close to being he's nowhere close to the same kind of shape as Giannis. He's nowhere near as conditioned as the same, he's not as agile as Giannis. Giannis is more agile, in better condition, and frankly more confident at this point. That's the part that's mentally, I would say, obviously just coming off of a championship, but also unlike Anthony Davis, and there's not a huge difference in age, but Anthony Davis is an older player physically, right? You know what I'm saying? Even though the difference in age isn't huge, his body is significantly older than Giannis's body. You follow what I'm saying?
I follow what you're saying, but then that kind of goes against what you're saying when you talk about Giannis being a soccer player and athletic. You would think
it goes right with what I'm saying about Giannis being a soccer player and being athletic.
But no,
because
what
Anthony
I'm
Davis
saying
is worn down more because he's had more injuries. Giannis has been very healthy.
but his body's probably taking more punishment. Playing soccer, I mean, soccer is a pretty physical
I
game.
mean, I'm
Much,
not trying to be
much,
mean,
much
but
more.
soccer's not really a punishment sport, James. It's
Well,
not really a sport. Soccer players, and once again, no offense at all. Um, Occasionally, there's a little bit of physical contact, right? And they go cartwheeling like they've been shot, right? We all seen it. But it's not a sport where your body gets beaten up. No, no, it's the exact opposite. Of all the major world sports, it's the one that's the least demanding in terms of your joints and stuff like that. There's very little jumping, right? Which basketball is chock full of. It's nice linear running. I mean, it's a lot like track and field, only with more agility being demanded because you have to keep track of the ball. So there's more, I guess, foot-eye coordination, I guess is what you would call it, as opposed to hand-eye coordination. So it demands a high level of coordination and cardiovascular conditioning. But it's not really that demanding in terms of beating up your body. You don't hear about a lot of guys with back injuries. You don't hear a lot of, I mean, basketballs where you hear a lot, we hear like that torn labrums. That's not something you hear about a lot in soccer. Soccer injuries are generally, okay, guys get tripped, they step on the back of someone's heel, that kind of stuff, right? You twist an ankle, even occasionally a broken ankle, right? Those are soccer injuries. But you don't get all those pounding, jumping injuries that you get in basketball. You don't get all that stuff.
So, are we expecting too much from Anthony Davis as the number? Well, without LeBron, he's supposed to be the number one. And without LeBron right now, Lakers are what, 3-8? I mean, 3-5.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, truthfully, the number one on that team when LeBron is gone is actually Russell Westbrook. I mean, ask anybody, especially Russell, in case you're wondering. It's all about that. He is an alpha. And this is what you're sort of driving at. Anthony Davis is an alpha. He's a terrific basketball player. He wants to win desperately, but he's not an alpha. So that's maybe what you're talking about. Giannis is an alpha. So that's you're not talking about desire, because his desire is plenty high. It's not a desire issue, but he's not an alpha. He's not the guy who walks in and says, here's what we're about to do, man. That's not him. That's never been his personality. Even as great as he was in high school, he was an unstoppable player in high school. I saw him, Perspectives High School, right over here on the south side of Chicago. He was unstoppable. But he wasn't the guy that was staring people down. He wasn't woofing. He wasn't, like it was nice guy dominance. Almost like Tim Duncan. Remember how Tim Duncan would just utterly destroy you but not say a peep to you the whole time? Kind of like that. Tim Duncan could go a whole season and not say 8 words. Remember that? You'd almost, if not for the fact that he was scoring, 31, 27, 22, 19.
But Tim Duncan also played for Doc. He played for a different type of coach. I mean, Pop, excuse me.
Oh, yeah. But my point though is that you're talking personality type, I guess, because you're talking about desire. His desire is nomination, because the guy works incessantly to come back from all these injuries, partially. But he's worked very hard in his game. He's a very skilled big man. I mean, he can shoot fairly well out beyond the 3-point line. You don't get to that as a guy who's 6'9" and change unless you have a high level of work ethic. So desire is not an issue. The issue is, I think you're talking, like I said, personality type. He's not an alpha. He's not the silverback, right? He's not that guy. He's not the one who walks in and says, okay, all eyes on me. No, that's not his personality. Russell Westbrook, that's an alpha. When he walks in, he says, all eyes on me, right? Even when LeBron was healthy, he kind of was like, okay, I'll let you have this, LeBron. But as soon as you get hurt or whatever, all eyes on me, right? That's a personality thing, even beyond the talent. Because Jimmy Butler, who is not a top 10, not top 15, maybe not a top 20 player, but he's always been an alpha. Even when he wasn't the best player on the team. He's been on teams where he wasn't the best player, but he was always an alpha. That's a personality type thing, not a desire thing, not a talent thing.
So what you're saying is that as far as the Lakers are concerned, it's LeBron or bust because you're not going to win with
Well, I
Russell
mean, I think
Westbrook.
we all do that going in, right? We all do that. I think that was established. I, I, I think the team knew that, right? I mean, they may not have admitted it to themselves, but when you build a team this way, and we've talked about this before, when they came off of last year and said, let's get older. But you clearly are banking on LeBron James having at least another year, maybe two, of being LeBron James. And then you're going to have to blow the whole thing up in a couple of years. By the year of our Lord, 2024, there may be no one left from the current iteration of the team, James. Literally, there might be not a single soul left.
Somebody's going to have to pay Russ. But we've seen that before. But we are joined by Mr. Jeffrey Fan. Mr. Fan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Glad to be on.
Glad to
Yes,
have you,
sir.
Mr. Jeffrey Fan.
All right.
You know, Bill's predicting a lot of gloom and doom here. You know, by 2024, the Lakers are going to be blown up. Or are we going to still have an
Well, I
ACC?
mean, it's an old team now. They're not going to be able to keep these guys around, James.
are we still going to have an ACC as we know it by in 2024, Mr. Fan?
2024? Yeah, we'll still have the ACC. 2034? That's a different question. But 20, that question has come up before. But the ACC's grant of rights pretty much mitigates any team leaving probably
Right.
before 2030. I mean, um, that's a pretty hardcore deal to break through. I mean, contracts are made to be broken, but nobody's getting out without paying a significant amount of money. And we're talking about the television rights for an ACC team for the next 12 or 13 years, and which I think I saw was in the neighborhood of 270 million or something like
Yep.
that. Or you even get that half, and you're still talking like 135 million dollars um, for a team to try to leave the ACC at
Yep.
least. Nobody's leaving by 2024. Now they got some things to work out. When you start getting around 2030, but the new commissioner Phillips, he's got time to figure it out, but he's got to work on it.
uh, Speaking of, yeah, I mean, there might not be any teams leaving, but I think there's a good number of coaches may be leaving. What's your take on the coaches carousel there in the ACC?
Yeah, there's a potential for quite a bit of coaching movement in the ACC. We already saw this week Justin Fuente being let go.
Yep.
A little bit surprising that they let him go at this point in the season, but his seat was definitely the hottest one in the ACC. He's been there several years, got off to a great start at Virginia Tech, and really looked like he was going to carry that program forward. After Frank Beamer won 19 games his first 2 years, was really good at Memphis. Um, and he looked like a great hire. I don't think anyone really questioned it, but they've just declined since those first 2 years. They've had chemistry issues, quarterback problems,
Yep.
offensively, just tons of issues. Being consistent on the offensive side of the ball, and then he's got a number of fourth quarter letdowns in games that looked like they were going to win. The Notre Dame collapse. I mean, you think of that. If they win that game where they led, with 3 minutes to go in that game, and the season could have been totally different for Virginia Tech. And, they just haven't been right since that point. Their only wins over a really bad Georgia Tech team who's got their own head coaching issues. But, Fuente is already gone. David Cutcliffe, who has been really good at Duke for quite a while, but I think he peaked out there around the 2014, 15, 16 years, he even won a division title and, really brought Duke back. But, over the last few years, last 3 or 4 years, they've really declined. And now they're in the in a down ACC, and I can't sugarcoat it. They're the worst team in the conference. They're likely going to go winless this year, getting blown out by Louisville tonight. And I
Yeah,
think Cutcliffe is a guy that they don't, it's kind of a shame because he's been such a good coach that they probably do need to make a move. But maybe for his sake, maybe he should kind of gracefully resign before they have to fire him. Couple other guys out there, Manny Diaz. Looked like they had started to right the ship there at Miami, had played some good football, and then they have the fourth quarter collapse at Florida State. And I mean, if you're a Miami head coach who's already kind of on thin ice, you can't lose to Florida State, and not in that manner. 4th and 14, you had the game won, and man, let it get away. So he kind of rebuilt a little bit of goodwill after a rough start to the season, and they were just back all over him again. He's on the fence right now. He needs a strong finish because he's not well liked in Miami. Another program that's in some trouble, I think, with their head coach, likely to retain him though, is Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. Um, Trying to transition from the triple option, Paul Johnson era was always going to be tough, but you're in year 3 now. You got to start showing some results, and they're just getting worse. He's going to have another 3-win season, 3 seasons, 9 wins, 3 wins each year. That's just not going to cut it. And, he's kind of flown under the radar because of the transition, but it's going to get really ugly these last 2 games, playing Notre Dame and playing Georgia. I mean, I think what's really going to not be a good look for Collins is I think that game's in Atlanta this year. And that stadium is 80% red, in at Georgia Tech, that's going to be a bad look for him. And what his problem has been, he has never really addressed the problem the entire year. You'll hear him in press conferences, after games he loses, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we turn it around. And I think his act has grown really tired in Atlanta, because of the long-term deal he's on. He's probably not going to be fired because he has a 7-year deal. He's only in year 3. But I definitely expect some staff changes at Georgia Tech, and the defensive coordinator, Andrew Thacker, better not get too comfortable in Atlanta because that defense has just been a complete disaster this year. I think it's ranked somewhere around 111, 113th, and worse than the year before and worse from their first year. So I really expect some staff changes there. We got quite a list of coaches on the ACC that could be in trouble. Scott Satterfield, he kind of goes up and hot and cold at Louisville. They've won a couple of games in a row, but his kind of dalliances in the off season with other coaching jobs kind of really turned the Louisville fan base against him. And he's got his share of fourth quarter struggles as well. But I think he might be in a little bit better shape because they're starting to play a little bit better. It do him a lot of good to beat Kentucky at the end of the season. So you've already lost Fuente. Probably the next hottest seat is Diaz after that Florida State loss. I would go put David Cutcliffe ahead of him. But yeah, there's a lot of guys who've got some simmering seats. At the end of the day, Fuente might be the only one that actually changes, but I think we'll see at least one more head coach, find themselves on the sideline after the season from the ACC.
Simmering seats. That's
Yep.
we might have to take that phrase from you there, Mr.
Oh yeah, and go for it.
some simmering seats.
Yeah.
Bill, anything on your radar you'd like to ask Mr.
Yeah,
Fan?
well, I'll mention some other simmering seats. So Babers up at Syracuse usually gets at least one sort of flashy win per year, but usually ends up being about 5-7, 6-6. Luckily, like Duke, Syracuse is a very patient program. So he certainly isn't on a hot seat, but his seat's probably simmering a little bit. Yeah, this is might well be it for Cutcliffe, partially because he's an older coach. It's difficult to recruit at Duke, but especially if you're an older coach, you don't hit the road a lot anymore at this point. And none of the guys on the staff are really known as killer recruiters. So that's once again, it's tough. I mean, it's not like recruiting to, Alabama. I mean, it's very, very different. You're competing against the service academies, Rice, Stanford, Northwestern. Like, you're not competing for the same kind of players that some other schools are competing for. So you're not going to get 5 stars for the most part. 5 stars don't tend to even consider Duke. 4 stars occasionally, if they are quarterbacks and sometimes even receivers, because of Cutcliffe's bona fides as an offensive guy. But the generational shine is going off because younger players don't tend to know about his connection to the Manning brothers. The guys 5 years ago did know that, but these guys who were like 16, 17 now, this is going to sound so depressing, but some of them barely remember Peyton Manning as a player. Realizing that guys who were 16, 17 were born in 2006. That's
crazy.
Jeez. So when you're recruiting guys born in 2005, 2006, good God, it sounds weird saying that. They have a little bit of a memory of Peyton as a player, but not a lot. Oh, God. And, a little bit more maybe of Eli. But they weren't alive when Eli was playing college football.
Yeah, they might just remember him struggling with the Giants the last couple years.
Right. That's right, which doesn't make you think I've got to go play for this guy's college coach. That it maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was that allure. I think Satterfield, I won't say safe, but Louisville knows it's not exactly a football powerhouse. And you're right, they don't love the footsie that's been played in the last couple of lost seasons, but he's still there. And I'm not trying to be mean about this, but who are you going to get that's better? Everyone wants to fire coaches, right? Let's fire him. But who are you going to get that's better, right? Okay, Miami, fire him. Who are you going to get that's better, right? I mean, there was a time when Miami was a job every college coach practically in the nation aspired to, but that time is gone.
Yep.
This is no longer a job that guys who used to coach pro ball are thinking, I could see myself there, right? It's no longer a top. It's not a flagship. It's still a good job. It's not a flagship job anymore. It's not in the same breath with Alabama anymore. It used to be, but it's not anymore. And then last but not least, I brought some names since we're firing coaches. I guess we could start talking about guys we should be talking about to maybe take some of these jobs. Ryan Silverfield, right? The coach now at Memphis, who was formerly their great offensive line coach, and now he's still having a fair amount of success at Memphis. I think he'd be a good fit at if indeed Satterfield did go, he'd be a good fit there, but I think he'd be a good fit also in Duke. Coach Norvell out at Nevada. Now, obviously people would say, oh, but he's out in Nevada. He's a California guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, Duke has to be a national recruiter anyway. You can't just recruit locally because of what we just said about, hey, you have a 1380 on your SATs or at least a 26 on your ACT and hopefully at least a 3.4 GPA. So you have to recruit nationally anyway. So I think they should be open to hiring someone who's not necessarily – I mean, Cutcliffe wasn't a guy with, a lot – we had some ties. I guess, he was connected to the program a little bit, but he coached a lot of different places in the South. Appalachian State.
The Sean Clark. He's a guy that I think really needs to be taken a hard look at by any ACC school.
Right. Correct.
I remember there was a game earlier this year between Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State, and I said, these are two head coaches that one of them needs to be in the ACC in the next 18
Maybe
months.
both.
Maybe both, exactly. Sean Clark there at App State, and then Jamie Chadwell at Coastal
Chadwell.
Carolina. I mean, two
Yeah,
really good.
Chadwell would be a great fit for. Well, once again, if Satterfield actually did leave, he'd be a fantastic fit at Louisville because they'd be into him. I don't know if Duke's regents would be feeling him, with the mullet militia and all that cool stuff. But yeah, he'd be a great. Frankly, though, I don't think the Miami people get excited about him, though they'd be wrong. But I think he'd kill down there. Actually, he recruits Florida very well now. And he's getting 2 and 3 stars, right, and doing it, getting it done. I mean, if he suddenly could unlock access to 4 and 5 star players, shit.
Yeah, I mean, I like those two guys because they're guys that, like you said, you've been saying, Duke's not going to recruit, 5-star players. I don't care who you bring there.
No.
They're just not going to be able to, recruit those kind of
Well,
players
they can't.
there.
I mean, the academic
Exactly.
restrictions make it almost impossible.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And then those are two guys, Sean and Clark and Jamie Caldwell, who are winning with the kind of players that Duke is recruiting against, and he's elevating them, which is the same thing Cutcliffe did, 5 years ago,
Earlier.
and that Dave Clawson is doing now. And I don't know. I think Cutcliffe, they never had great talent at Duke, but I think he's let it slip.
It's
so
always
far.
been a 2.5 star program.
Yeah, and right now they got like 1.5-star players. I mean, I name another player on Duke's roster, and I'm sure I'm leaving off a couple good players, but name someone else other than Mateo Durant on that team that may play in the NFL. Maybe there's another one, but I mean, that's a.
So I know some people who think Brett Romberg could maybe be like an H-back type in the NFL if he put on a little weight. But yeah, you're right. That team's not loaded. They have a defensive back that I like. What's his name? Where's 25?
Oh yeah, the name's escaping me right at the moment.
But you're right. You have to work for it to think of guys. Yeah, Durant's a slam dunk. He's going to be drafted somewhere in the middle rounds and have a nice NFL career, probably as a third down back. But yeah, you're right. The other guys are question marks. Guys who might make it. There's not too many slam dunks on that roster. You're 100% right about that.
No, yeah, it's a very, really low talented roster on that team. One surefire NFL prospect, maybe a couple, borderlines who'll get a look, and then there's probably not 5 players on that whole roster that'll really get serious NFL looks, and you just can't compete at this level no matter. And I still think they're a pretty well coached team, but they just don't have any talent.
This version of Duke couldn't win the Sun Belt.
No, I absolutely agree. And another coach I think out there that's going to get some hard look after this season is Dan Lanning, that defensive coordinator at Georgia. I mean, he's put together, one of the best defenses we've probably seen in a good 10 or 15 years overall. I mean, I know Georgia's schedule has not been very good, but I mean that's a really good defense, and he's a noted recruiter, and he's a guy I think could do really well at Virginia Tech, because I mean that was how that program was built under Frank Beamer, was on defense and special teams, and I think Lanning is a guy that could fit right into that mindset at Virginia Tech, who they still play pretty good defense there. It hadn't been that long since Bud Foster was there. And I mean, they still are pretty salty as a defensive unit, but I think, he can just find himself a good offensive coordinator and build that program back on really special defense and special teams, what they kind of grew up with. And that guy, he's going to be a head coach. It's just a matter of time before Lanny could be this year that he's finding himself as a head coach of his own program.
I'll give you one other name, since we're just throwing names out there, that I think could be a fit, possibly at Virginia Tech. And he's a young coach, and he's fairly new. I mean, he's probably not leaving yet anyway, but I'd make a phone call. Charles Huff at Marshall. Smart, high energy, gets it. Has won a few recruiting battles already in his short time at Marshall.
Mhm.
Recruited Florida well, which is always a key to success, almost anywhere, I guess. But and obviously is used to recruiting the Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, Tennessee sort of quadrangle or whatever you want to call it anyway, because it's in Marshall anyway.
Yeah, and he's got that a nice pedigree of schools coaching at Penn State, Mississippi
Yep.
State, Alabama. So he knows that Mid Atlantic region, knows
Yep.
the South, knows winning football. I mean, that's definitely someone they at least kind of gauge his interest in the
Right.
program, and maybe because a little bit of a lack of head coaching experience, that might be a person that Duke can make a call to, because I'm not sure they're going to be capable of landing a Lanning type coach there
It's
who's
going
going
to
to
be
probably
a tough
it's going to be
sell, right?
tough to
Oh,
to get
hey, I've
someone.
got my pick of, maybe not the top jobs, but the next notch below top jobs that open up. He's going to be in play for all the ones. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked even if a school like USC at least considered it, right? Because everyone's obviously been piling on Coach Helton, but
Right.
in my mind, the real reason USC sort of fell from grace, other than, well, two things. One is no longer dominating the public schools. They've still got a lot of the private school kids, but for some reason they stopped getting the public school kids in Southern California. I don't know what happened with that. And then the defense, right? I mean, the people always pay attention to the offense, but when USC was dominant, their defenses were incredible. And
Yeah,
they have but not
absolutely. They
that
were
good on
they were
defense
as
at all.
athletic as any team in college football when they were rolling it the way they were under Pete Carroll. I mean, on
Yep.
both. I mean, those Reggie Bush days, Matt Leinart. Yeah, though it can be done out there under the right head coach at
Yeah.
USC.
I mean, once you get beyond, well, pretty much all of Texas and whole much of Florida, and Georgia is in the mix as well. But even if you just get the bottom sixth of the state of California, I didn't even say the third. If you can dominate the bottom sixth of the state of California, you can build a pretty nice program, right?
Yep.
If you're getting the kids from what, James, what's the county above Orange County going north?
Humboldt.
Yeah, okay, probably. So if you draw a line about there, you get all the good kids from the Inland Empire. You get all the best kids from Orange County. But most importantly, USC, you get back to getting the kids from the public schools in Los Angeles County. And maybe you throw in a couple more counties for flavor. That's enough, right? And you get the occasional kid who wants to come there from Texas or Florida or whatever. Like they did. They'd get the occasion, like Mike Williams
You can do
from
pretty
Florida.
well.
Occasional.
You can do pretty well recruiting the city in LA and San Diego.
And I think USC is still, they're still close enough to when they were really good that they still got a huge brand name. I mean, Bill, like you mentioned, Miami, it's been so long since they've been good. I mean, really good. We're talking like 20 years, and Nebraska's in that category. But I mean,
Oh, yeah,
USC.
Nebraska needs to come to grips with the new reality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Um, they're not going back to the Tom Osborne days anytime soon. But USC is close enough to their major success. We're only talking, just a hair over 10 years that people. Okay, maybe not the guys coming out of high school, but their parents still really remember when they were really really good,
yep.
and then their older brothers are going to remember when they were really really good. So I think USC under the right circumstances, can get back, um, to being really good without under the right coach. They can get back in a Pac-12 that can be had with a program that really
They're
gets
two
going.
recruiting classes away.
Yep.
They're just 2 recruiting classes away from being the bully on the block again. If, as you said, they get the right coach.
Mr. Fan, without Clemson, how close is the ACC to being back to being one of the bullies on the block?
Yeah, and Clemson's. I mean, I think right now Clemson's still the only program in the ACC that can make that leap into being a playoff contender. And I know they've struggled
Yep.
this year. I mean, Wake Forest. Hats off to Dave Clawson for maximizing.
Yes.
What he's done there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that offense is just fantastic, and they might very well end up winning the ACC, but they're just not there defensively to really be a playoff team, or to compete against the top five. So I mean, you get past in the ACC, you get past them. You've got Pittsburgh, who's pretty solid, but still kind of prone to losing games they shouldn't lose. They lost to Western Michigan earlier this year after beating Tennessee, but Pickett's been very good, a very good quarterback for them. But they also have a loss to Miami. So
Yep.
I think there are programs that are not that far from being like top 10, but still even being down this year, and probably being maybe the number 3 or 4 team in the ACC. Clemson is still the closest. They've taken a massive amount of injuries this year.
Yep.
They just lost Justin Ross out for the season. Brian Breezy, their great defensive lineman, was lost
Yep.
for the year. They've had guys out 3-4 games. I think I read something that they've had 15 or 20 major injuries going across that team. Louisville, and when they played that game, I don't even think they had except for Ross, any of their starting wide receivers. Shipley's been hurt.
Yep.
But when they come back next year, they should again be. I mean, and they've been very good defensively, but they get back Breezy next year, and I think defensively they're going to be one of the top units again in the country. The question mark for them is, is DJ Uangalele, is he the guy?
Right.
Is he the guy? I mean, you put a quality quarterback behind there, and it could still turn out to be him. But if they get quality quarterback play, I mean, they're probably back in the top 5. Because I think Shipley is a guy who can become a very good running back. I'm not sure if I put him in a class of Travis Etienne or Wayne Gallman, but
No.
he can be a good, and he got a lot of comparisons to McCaffrey. I'm not sure I quite see that yet, but he's only a freshman. But he's a good player that can cause some trouble. So with Clemson, for them to get back, Uangalele is going to have to take a massive leap in the offseason. Or I think Kublik is the name, who's one of the highest rated quarterbacks coming in. I mean, he comes in and he could take that job. I think Clemson is still, they haven't dropped off that much. They've just taken a ton of injuries and had issues on the offensive side of the ball. And the other thing that could get Clemson back, quicker than one might think, is Dabo Swinney is now starting to make statements where he's finally going to embrace the transfer portal. I think he's come around on that. He's probably 2 years behind everyone else, but some of the statements he's made in the last 10 days saying, yeah, we're going to have to look at the portal. You make the right moves from the portal, and you can get fast. You can improve awfully fast. So I think that was pretty big for Sweeney to finally come around on that.
Michigan State, great example.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially their offensive line. I don't know if you've noticed this. When I've watched every single game I've watched of Clemson, I just watch the offensive line now. And at least 3 or 4 times a game, I see somebody get blown up.
Yeah.
Around in a way that I don't remember Clemson offensive linemen getting dominated in the last few years.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, you could kind of see some subtle signs of slippage on the offensive line when they really ran up against, some of those beefy defensive lines from LSU and from the SEC. and Ohio State. They got pushed around a pretty good bit, but they were able to get by against most teams with their offensive line. And then this year, the bottom just fell out. Um, I mean, they just were, especially early in the season, they were just getting manhandled by
Yes.
by anybody they played. It didn't matter.
Yes.
I mean, it was one thing when Georgia, you know,
Yeah, it happens to everybody with Georgia.
yeah, I mean, when Georgia did it, it was kind of like, oh, well, okay, that's probably as good an offensive line as there is in college football. But I mean, when they were getting pushed around by Georgia Tech and in that game and only scored 14 points, you were like, oh my goodness, they have got a problem. And they've gotten a little bit better towards the middle part of the season, been able to run the ball a little bit better. But yeah, they need an upgrade there overall because even when they have improved, they're no more than an average unit at best, and at times, like you said, Bill, they have just gotten blown up by good defensive fronts.
Mr. Fan, does a 2-loss Alabama team make the college football playoffs?
They shouldn't, but they probably will.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not buying this at all.
They're not that good. I'll just say
No.
it. I've watched them. They're not that good.
No, yeah, they're not that good. I mean, this is a team that was a possession away from losing to Florida. They lost to Texas A&M when Texas A&M was unranked, looked bad doing it. I mean, are they a top 10 team? Yeah, no question about it. And if they go on and beat Georgia, yeah, no question, playoff team. But 2 losses, no, they haven't done enough to prove that they're one of the 4 best teams. If they lose 2 more times, you know outside of Alabama and Georgia, I mean, you got a lot of question marks in the SEC. There's a lot of mediocre football teams. Ole Miss is a good solid team, and I don't think Texas A&M is all that bad. But I mean, there are a lot of other bad football teams in the SEC, and I just don't think that they would have the resume with a second loss to be a deserving team. But I think we've seen what the playoff committee is doing. I mean, if Alabama, they do no wrong in the eyes of the committee, which just absolutely blows my mind. I mean, they probably could lose a second game and they'll find a way. I have no faith in them to make any decision that makes any sense whatsoever right now.
Oh God.
Okay, better team, a 2-loss Alabama or a 2-loss Michigan State?
Ooh, that you know, I think I think I might have to actually probably I think I would go with Michigan State. Um, they have the better win over
Yep.
Michigan. Um, I think they can control the line with Walker in a way that Alabama can't, and they might be better defensively. They may not be as talented, but that would be close. And I might actually lean Michigan State, especially if Michigan State beats Ohio State this weekend.
Blasphemy. Blasphemy. Come on, Mr. Fan.
Yeah, if Michigan State knocks off Ohio State and then loses somewhere else for that second loss,
Yeah, like in the championship game.
Yeah, in the championship game, I'd be hard pressed to put Alabama over Michigan State because I think the Spartans would have a better resume.
I agree.
Would you put them over a 2-loss Ohio State?
Michigan State or Alabama?
Alabama. Losses to Oregon and Michigan State.
I'd probably put Ohio State over them even in that case too. Yeah, I'm just not that impressed by Alabama.
They're not that
this
good
year. I mean, I'm just not able to give them the benefit of the doubt from what I've seen from them this year. Had they blown out every team maybe they had played and then played fantastic against Texas A&M and lost, maybe I could see another loss. But I mean, that game against Texas A&M, they were beat
Yep.
soundly.
Yes.
It was not a close game. The score was close, but it was not indicative of the game action.
Uh, well, Mr. Fan, except for your blasphemy against my Ohio State Buckeyes, yeah, but
I take
we
the
Is he
always,
Buckeyes.
still invited back, James?
I said I take the Buckeyes over Tulas, Alabama.
yes, he
Yeah,
did.
there you go.
Yes, he did. He did redeem himself. But I'm going for Georgia against Ohio State as the title game this year, and of course my Buckeyes bringing it home. So, but Mr. Fan, always good talking to you. Always good talking about the ACC and about the other conferences. I have to ask you, it's coming up. I know we've kept you a little bit over time, but what's ahead for ACC basketball?
It hadn't been a good start for the ACC this year in basketball. There have been some ugly losses on the resume. I mean, we got the ACC's got losses across the board to Miami of Ohio, UCF, Furman, Navy. I don't know what happened to Tony Bennett in Virginia. They can't shoot the ball at all. But
Well, you just answered your own question right there. They're a team that plays old school basketball, and their shots have to go down because they can't create through other like fun basketball isn't their thing. Your shots have to go down, and if the shots aren't going down, oof.
yeah,
Ooh.
I mean, and then they're in the year they won the national championship, they ran that same offense, but they had three guys on that team that played in the NBA, and I
Yep,
don't know if they have that now. So if they're not
they do
making
not.
those, you know,
I'm going to say
yeah,
with confidence, there's not three NBA guys on the team right now.
yeah, in the context of the way they run that offense, if they're not knocking down open threes, they're not creating their own shot. Um, but I think a couple positive things is um, I think Duke looks really good out of the gate. They already got a win over Kentucky, and I think they're going to be good all year, trying to finish out Krzyzewski's final season as good as they can. The Banchero kid, we'll see what goes on with that DWI. Uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that was kind of a weird deal, but it looks like the grandson of Krzyzewski's going to be in more trouble than
Mm-hmm.
him. But they keep that roster intact. I think Duke can be really really good. Virginia Tech is a team that is they hadn't played a quality opponent really yet, but they've dominated everyone they faced. Guys like Kevin Aluma. Um, Mike Young's got a really good team at Virginia Tech, and I think North Carolina, Hubert Davis, that it was kind of an underrated win because you don't really think beating a mid major is that big a deal, but they went down to a tough environment against College of Charleston and got a win there. And that North Carolina team can put up a ton of points. They're not that great defensively, but
No,
no,
they're going to
yeah.
be get ready for a lot of 88 to 94 games.
Yeah, they're going to play a lot of 80 to 90 type games, but they get up and down the floor. They play a real fun style of basketball.
The
Kind of like
opposite of
watch,
Virginia,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
they're the
kind of like
opposite.
watching the Houston Rockets. Who scores the most?
yeah, yeah. Just going to keep outscoring. So I think there's some teams in the ACC that are going to make it fun, make it a good season. But man, they had quite a few teams take it on the chin in the first week of the season. Um, but I think you have to look, especially out of the gate. Duke looks like it's the ACC's best team.
And I've got to ask you your Heisman hopefuls. It seems like the Heisman race is pretty wide open now. Uh,
Yep.
I thought kind of after the Michigan State game, it was kind of decided that maybe a running back might be in place this year. What do you think about a running back maybe actually winning the Heisman this year? Is it possible?
I think it's quite possible. The Kenneth Walker there at Michigan State. Um, to me, the winner of this weekend between Ohio State and Michigan State, either C.J. Stroud jumps into the lead of the Heisman chase or Kenneth Walker. I know Bryce Young is getting so much play as one of the leading candidates for the Heisman, and I mean I put him in my top five, but
Mhm.
man, I just can't buy him over Stroud or Walker right now. you know, I can't get that Texas A&M game out of my mind where he just
Right?
didn't,
You
where he
can't
just didn't.
unsee it, can you?
I can't unsee that right now, and um, I see Stroud and 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 Walker as my leading candidates with the winner of that game, going out in front. Kenny Pickett got a little bit of run here in the ACC from Pitt. He was putting up some monster stats, but he's probably a fair bit behind those three. I think the winner
Right.
of the Heisman is going to come out of those three. And today I probably go Walker, Stroud, Young, then maybe Pickett at fourth or fifth, and then after this weekend, I'd probably take it to the winner of the Ohio State Michigan State game.
All
Yeah,
right, Mr.
I don't know what, and I like Pickett just fine, but I don't know what he's done better than say Jake Hayner, other than be in a television time slot where more people see him. I mean, he's a good, solid college quarterback. He's a very good college quarterback, but I think Jake Hayner's just as good, if not better, and he's not getting any discussion really at all. After Fresno State knocked off Oregon, I thought maybe people will finally take notice of him. Nope, nothing. I'll never understand how they decide who to pay attention to, who not to. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean Pickett may not even be the top quarterback in the ACC at the end of the day.
Sam
I mean,
Hartman, thank you.
yeah,
Yes, can we get some
Sam
love for him
Hartman.
for talking about Heisman Trophy candidates? Why isn't he being discussed?
Yeah, I mean I think it was Pickett was just putting up some eye-popping stats during the first half of the season and kind of cooled off. And but I mean, if you're even looking at the ACC Player of the Year race, I mean, you got to put Sam Hartman in the mix. Brennan Armstrong from Virginia was in that mix too before he
So he
got
got
hurt.
hurt. Yeah.
Yeah,
we got
I
a
really would have
quarterback
loved it.
there. We got a quarterback there at Pitt too. Don't forget about him, Mr. Fan.
Oh yeah. We definitely got Pickett on the radar, but he seems to. It seems like the national media kind of favors him over Hartman, who I think right now they're probably running neck and neck for the ACC Player of the Year. Would have loved to seen how Brennan Armstrong would have done with that offense against Notre Dame. There was the only way they would have beat Notre Dame is in a shootout, and once he
Right.
was out, there was no chance.
Yep.
Well, thanks as always, Mr. Fan. We're going to have to come back and see what happens with the winner of the ACC and talk a little basketball and about those coaching changes. So I'll be talking to you again soon. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, and I know you have some articles out there for us.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Talkin' ACC Sports, and we're blogging on ACC Sports at allsportsdiscussion.com. So check that out. And as always, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the show, and look forward to being back in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fan. You have a great night.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bill, I know a lot of people probably don't know about this guy unless they're really close followers of college football. But we have a guy, a young freshman. It was an kind of extended season. I'm kind of, maybe you can kind of bring me and the fans up to date on what's happening with this young freshman. It's what, coming up on 2,000 yards already.
You talking about Sean Tucker? Who are we talking about?
Hold on. Is it Sean Tucker? I'm talking about the kid. Was he from CMU? Hold on. Small college kid. I just happened to come across his name while I was looking up some things for the program here. Hold on. And it had something to do with him still being considered a freshman.
Oh well, I'm trying to think who you could be talking about.
Division II.
Okay, so that helps. Okay, so and you're talking about a running back, I assume, yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So it shouldn't take me too long to figure out who we're talking about. So if you're talking about Division II running backs and guys who got the I guess you're talking about a second-year freshman or whatever you want to call it because
right, a second-year
because
freshman.
of the mulligan or however you want to call it for last season. Okay,
Right.
so this shouldn't be too hard for me to figure out. One guy that I really like, but I think he's considered to be a junior or maybe a third-year sophomore, is a kid named Toriano Clinton, who my buddy Carl Barnett, son Joseph Barnett, plays at St. Lawrence High School in beautiful south suburb in Chicago. That's where this kid Toriano Clinton's from, but that's not who you're talking about because even with the mulligan year, I think he's a third sophomore. So I'm going
Lou Nichols the third.
Oh, okay. Well, wait a second. That's not that small a school. That's Central Michigan. That's not Division II. That's Division I. That's FBS, buddy.
I remember. Once again, I'm going back to my Youngstown State days. See, I remember when we played Central Michigan and South Dakota State. So
right. Well, South Dakota State South Dakota State's FCS, so that's what these call 1AA. But Central Michigan's Division 1A. They're in the MAC with Ball State and Western
Michigan. Right,
North
because they just beat Ball State, 37-17 or something like that. That was the game.
So I am very familiar with him because I have him on one of my college fantasy teams. So I'm very much a fan.
Do you have 60 college dynasty teams? No.
I mean, I don't have the same volume as Mike Valverde. I just make up for it in diversity. I don't have as many teams, but I have more different kinds of teams than he has.
Okay, all right.
He's not doing the college thing yet. But
so tell us about Mr. Nichols.
Sure, I'll be thrilled. He is the quote unquote modern running back, right? He can catch the ball. Obviously, he can run with the ball. They don't ask him to do a lot in terms of blitz pickup, but he can do it. He just isn't asked to do it that much because they prefer to throw the ball to him as a hot route as opposed to having him hang in there and take on a charging linebacker. And I don't blame them. That probably is very smart of them to do that as opposed to having him, have some 235-pound dude run into him. So hats off for them to figuring out just, hey, let's just have him catch a little outlet pass. And it's the same. It still takes the hit off the quarterback and allows us to maybe get a play out of it. So he's from the legendary Cass Technical High School in Detroit, Michigan. Powerhouse for all my life, and probably even before that, I'm guessing. Freshman of the year last year. And, of course, I guess he may have a chance to be the first guy maybe to win Freshman of the Year twice, since I guess he's still that. But, yeah, he played for Thomas Wiltshire, who you might remember. Since you're an Ohio State guy, remember Thomas Wiltshire?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that was his head coach in high school. Won a state championship, and in 2016 when he was at Cass, he also was part of two of the city high school public league championships in the state of Michigan in the Detroit area. Redshirted in 2019, so I guess he's a third-year freshman. That's never said before this year. But was in 4 games, since you get 4 games for free in essence. Had 19 carries for 89 yards. Against Akron, he had 7 carries for 43 with a long of 15. You could see even then that he had something. And then last year he was terrific, right? He was a terrific player last year. 10 catches, 109 yards and a touchdown, and immediately showed what he could do as a running back. I mean, he was unmistakable. He had 196, almost a 200-yard game against Eastern Michigan. Just a terrific player. The one that really stands out is that Northern Illinois game. That's when he really, in 2020, when he really entered my, whatever you want to call it, cognizance, right? I started paying attention. And so when I had a chance to get him, and I got him late because I guess people don't watch enough MAC football, but I got him late in the college football dynasty draft that I was in. And I was like, boo. So I'm 9-2, at least in part because of Lou Nichols. Also, I had Jalen Cropper had a great year until he got hurt. But yeah, I had a good draft. But the point is that this guy has it all. Pro Football Focus loves him if you care about that kind of thing. But he's a complete running back. He knows how to make people miss, even though he's not exactly huge. He has enough power that he can run through arm tackles. He's probably about 218 pounds, about 5'10" and a half. So he's not small either. I mean, he's good size. The person or the back who reminds me most of, remember Garrison Hurst?
Yes, yes.
That's the running back he most reminds me of, is Garrison Hurst. Running
Okay.
style, build, all that. But I look at him, I keep thinking, oh man, that guy reminds me of Garrison Hurst. I think he's going to be a terrific pro.
And who are the guys that you have on your Heisman watch list?
Well, if it were up to me, right? Because I don't care about name brands and if you play in front of a gazillion people. So whatever, I would have some guys that other people wouldn't have. So I think you can't go wrong with Kenneth Walker III. He's had an amazing year. If I'm going to have some quarterbacks up there, I'm going to go with the ones that are having the best seasons. Jake Hayner's having an amazing season. Carson Strong's having a terrific season. And then we talk about Sam Hartman, right? Terrific, amazing season. Those are the kind of guys I would have up there, even though they might not be the name brand guys. I know everyone wants to try to they tried to push Malik Willis. They tried to push Sam Howell. They tried to push Spencer Rattler. All three of them strikeouts, right? I don't care about hype. I look at how are you playing. Sam Hartman's outplayed all those three guys we just mentioned before. Jake Haener is outplaying and playing through injuries. Jake Haener is tough as nails, man. He's not a big quarterback. He's a tough one. He's taken some wicked shots, and he keeps getting up and playing well. And Carson Strong, that kid, speaking of people who take shots, he will hang in there. You know, guys putting his shoulder pad right in his sternum, and he's dropping dimes. He's hitting dig routes 17 yards down the field with some guy trying to run through his chest. I love that kid. He should be getting more Heisman buzz than he's getting. But for whatever reason, they're locked into only the guys from these quote-unquote name brand programs. I don't care about that stuff. So, yeah, those are some of the guys that make my list. Sean Tucker, in fact. Now, once again, Syracuse isn't having, just like Texas. Texas and Syracuse not having kind of seasons that will allow guys to be considered. But Sean Tucker and Bijan Robinson, if not for the fact that their teams are losing, which, you know, I can't blame them because it's not their fault. They're playing great football, but, you know, the team's not having a great season. Those are guys that certainly deserve consideration, even though their teams aren't exactly doing well. But it's not a team award, right? I mean, Paul Hornung managed to win in 1956, I believe it was, despite the fact that the team went 2-8.
Speaking of the Horning Award, we do have a couple guys. Wide receiver Jaden from Michigan State. He's one of the finalists for the Paul Horning Award.
Yep.
How do you have him listed up on your big draft board there?
I like him a lot. There's guys I would have ahead of him just because I think they have a better chance to be terrific pros. And I think he's going to be a good pro, right? I think he's going to be, you know, in that sort of Marvin Jones, Tyrell Williams, Kenny Golladay kind of mode. So very, very good. But ideally, a very good number two, maybe even number 2-3 guy as a receiver. Not quite in the same breath with guys like, this is going to sound like sucking up, but Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, those guys are still a notch above him in terms of that. I really like Romeo Doubs also from Nevada. I think he's a terrific player. I mean, this is a really good wide receiver class. The last few years, this is third year in a row, we will have had deep, talented, and varied wide receiver classes. There's a lot of really good wide receivers coming up in this class that are going to, I believe, they won't all be starters, but they're all going to have really solid NFL careers. You know, because you can't a bunch of X receivers. You need guys to do other things too. You need slots. You need Z's. You know, you need possession receivers too.
Speaking of, you know, we talked about the receivers, talked about the running backs, but as you and I know, we both have a very special place in our hearts for the DBs.
Indeed.
Who's some of your best cornerbacks that we should be looking at coming out?
Well, now once again, my tastes are a little different from most. I like tacklers, first of all, right? I don't some people are like, oh, how long are their arms? Well, I mean, that's cool too. But I mean, I really like guys like Sam Womack, right? Even though he's not the tallest, he's not the fastest, he's a tackler, he's smart, super high football IQ. And then I like some of the usual guys. I like some of the guys everybody else likes too. I'm not always trying to be a contrarian, but yeah, this is a nice cornerback class, and some of the ones that I think will end up having long, successful careers. Like there's a kid who's a D2 kid who I think is gonna be terrific. His name's Devin Haffer from Tarleton State. I like him a lot. Well, not a person that you're going to hear most people talk about, I guess, because he's from Tarleton State, but he's got size. He's a good athlete and really good ball skills. But yeah, well, let's walk through some of the people that everyone's already talked about. Sort of the what is it called, the creme de la creme, right? Or the usuals that everybody sort of hits on. And I do like some of them. Like I said, I'm not always trying to be weird or whatever, but I just want to mention some of the guys that I don't think get enough love. And you're right there or not in, but near San Diego State University. I guess you're pretty close. I think
I'm right down the street, as a matter of fact.
Okay, good. I think a lot of those guys are going to play at the next level. Obviously, everybody's cornerback one coming in the season was Darryl Stingley Jr. He hasn't had quite the season that people were anticipating, but he's still going to go top 10. Sauce, right? Ahmad Gardner, a.k.a. Sauce. That's a guy I think is going to go somewhere in the top 25. Trent McDuffie's going somewhere in the top 50. Andrew Booth from Clemson, injury marred and just otherwise kind of meh career year. And then the emergence of Goodrich, the other corner, the bigger corner also. I guess they're both about 6 feet, 6'1". Goodrich may be just a little bit bigger, but not much bigger. But I think both those guys are going to go somewhere in the top. Well, in the case of Booth, probably top 30 to 50. In the case of Goodrich, 55, 60 to maybe 80, 90, maybe in the low 100s. Trent McDuffie, probably is going to become a nickel at the next level, but he's going to be really good. I like him a lot. Kyrie Elam didn't have the year people were expecting, also from Florida, but he's going to be he should still have a good chance. I like Kobe Bryant, right, who's another Cincinnati guy. I really think highly of him. Iowa has two corners, though Riley Moss might end up being moved to safety, partially because he's white, because there are no starting corners in the NFL, but it has not been one since married to Angie Harmon from USC. Tall, junior college. He's done a little bit of acting also. Jason Sehorn. There's not been a white starting corner in the NFL since Jason Sehorn, and that was not quite 20, but getting close to 20 years ago, probably 17, 18 years ago. So it's been a minute. So that's why some of the talk is that Riley Moss may end up getting moved to corner.
You made the safety.
Right, Tariq Castro Fields, another guy that testing is going to determine a lot of his. He could be a 4th, 5th rounder, or he could be a late second, depending on how his physical testing works out. Jalen Green is another guy that has a lot of things people like: length, hips and feet. That a lot of people like from Mississippi State. And yes, let's talk San Diego State. Tyler Hawkins, right? He's one of the San Diego State guys that I really like. I'm a huge fan of DeJordan Strong and Sean Jolly, to hit a couple of Sunbelt guys. DeJordan Strong from Coastal and Sean Jolly from App State. Those are guys I like. Devin Taylor, speaking of the MAC, right, from Bowling Green. Now here's a guy who's an older prospect, so people are kind of down on him because he's going to turn 24 or something by the time the next football season rolls around, or be close to it. But Chase Lucas from Arizona State. Now people may forget, but you and I remember because remember when John Outlaw and Herman Edwards were a heck of a cornerback tandem in the 70s until the early 80s with the Eagles. And so Herman, just like a lot of coaches, becomes a position coach before big games. He goes from being a head coach to position coach like Saban does with his defensive backs at Alabama. Same deal. Herman Edwards gets involved personally in coaching defensive backs prior to big games. So Chase Lucas has absorbed a lot of really good defensive back coaching, both from his actual position coach as well as his head coach who becomes position coach. And of course, you and I are both old enough to remember a couple of fathers of a couple of these guys. You remember Al Blades Sr., who was from the Blades clan, right, along with Benny and there's another one. I can't remember the other one's name. But I know there's 3 Blades brothers, and 2 of them had nice careers. One of them had a cup of coffee.
Yeah, definitely remember
Benny,
Benny.
Al, and there's a third one. There was 3 Blades brothers. I can't remember the other one's name, but the third one just had a cup of coffee in the NFL. He wasn't even that good in college, but the name got him into somebody's camp. And then Trey Swilling is the son of, yes, you guessed it, Pat Swilling at Georgia Tech. So Al Blades Jr. is another one of those tall corners. He's probably about 6'2" and a quarter, probably about 196 pounds. And, one of those guys that people like Pete Carroll will likely fall in love with because he loves those big corners. And then Trey Swilling, shockingly, he's decent size. He's probably about 5'11" and 3/4, probably about 199. But, we all remember his dad, who was this rocked up drop end in college. You ended up being an outside linebacker with the Dome Patrol. And I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, but whatever. The Dome Patrol with Jim Morris Sr., right, in New Orleans, and of course was terrific in his days at Georgia Tech, where one of his teammates was Ken Wisenhunt, speaking of tying it back to Pittsburgh, kind of. Zion McCullum at Sam Houston State is a gigantic corner. Maybe too big. We'll see. Testing will determine if he gets to stay a corner, but there's been some talk of him moving to safety as well, but once again, length, good tackler. I like tacklers, as I've made it clear, hopefully, to anybody who didn't already know that. There's some real, and of course, there's a bunch of FCS corners that are going to be really, really, really good. I touched on a couple of them, but this is a really good small school defensive back class. Beyond the guys that everybody's heard of, there are some absolutely, positively terrific smaller school corners. And some of them, yep.
Yeah, we'll probably get into them with Demetrius and some of the other guys on, and we're talking about those final awards. Of course, we're going to be talking about the wide receiver awards, the DB awards, the Buckus awards. Those that don't get as much glamour as the Heisman, of course, and
so we'll get to like the Outland Trophy, the Paul Hornung, the Jim.
Well, we just talked about one of the finalists for the Paul Hornung Trophy when we were talking about Mr. Hayden from Michigan State.
I'll tell you a kid who should get some talk is that kid Devin Tompkins from Utah State. That kid's electric with a capital E electric. He's going to be terrific as a return specialist, slot receiver type at the next level.
Let's see. For those of you keeping up with the game, right now, the Pats are pitching a shutout, 13-0, and the Falcons are on the move. Bill, I found out today, and I'm not going to say that it was a big surprise, but maybe the number was a big surprise. Mr. Belichick reportedly getting $18 million, the $18 million man, highest paid coach in U.S. sports.
Correct.
And not the NFL.
Nope.
Not the NBA.
Nope.
I said in
In
U.S.
the
sports,
U.S. of A. Yes.
is Mr. Belichick worth every dollar? Your thoughts? Oh,
Well, let me ask you this:
here it
if you
comes. See,
say, if
we
you
all
said to,
we
if
knew
you said to
Matty
Mr.
Ice would do
Kraft,
it.
if you said to Mr. Kraft, in exchange for whatever it is that he's paid him over his entire career at New England, but in exchange, you're going to get 6 rings. He would say, I would pay 10 times that amount for 6 rings. So he's worth, you can't overpay Bill Belichick. Like, there's not a number you can come up with where he wouldn't be worth it, really. Because when you're a billionaire or close to it, and you would like to win Super Bowls, plural, I mean, what do you think Jerry Jones would pay if he could get Bill Belichick, James? What do you think he'd pay him? 50 million? 60 million? If that's what it took. You think he wouldn't do that? There's no salary cap for coaches. You can pay them whatever you want. I guarantee you that if Jerry Jones had a shot to get Bill Belichick, he'd pay him whatever it took. If it was 75 million, he'd write the check, James.
The $18 million man. Gained a lot of new respect.
He could get 3 times that if that's what he wanted.
I'm sure, when, like you said, when you really break it down, to how many rings, just the mystique, but here's a coach when 20 years ago, I believe, if you looked at his record, he was what, 5 and something? What, I mean, 20 years ago, he was the coach of the Cleveland Browns, wasn't he?
Right. And he had a winning season, and then they were building towards having a playoff run, and then the next year it comes out that the team's moving, right? And everything went downhill. When he first gets there, the team is terrible. Everything sucks. Everything's terrible. It's a bad roster. They've been badly coached. He gets rid of a bunch of people, brings in a bunch of new people, fires pretty much everybody in the building. I'm barely joking when I say that, like security staff, parking, whatever. Like, he turns the whole thing over basically and starts it over. Like, he basically, like an Etch a Sketch, starts. It's almost like, like I said, rebooting the program. And they're, like I said, they're building. They're getting better. Everything's headed in the right direction until, of course, it comes out that Mr. Waddell's selling the team, and not selling the team, but moving the team. Sorry, they wish he'd sell the team, but he's moving the team. And like I said, that
in the middle of the night, no less.
Yeah. Well, and who doesn't love that? But that's what essentially.
I'm from Pittsburgh. I did. It tickled the hell out of me. But
Right, I got it. But that's essentially what cut the legs out from under what was going on with the with the team. And I mean, you could say they hadn't really recovered until last year. I mean, it took them 20 some odd years to recover from it.
And that's debatable. We'll talk about that a little bit too, because my next question, of course, is that quarterback for the Clowns, Mr. Baker Mayfield, comes out and says, well, this is the most beat up I've ever been, but hold on. First of all, you play in the AFC North, Baker. I mean, what did you expect? And maybe,
Sure.
As a quarterback, maybe you want to talk to some of those other guys, not necessarily in your division, but, I'm sure that you could make a call to any quarterback that's been playing, 9 weeks now, at some of them at least 10, if they haven't had a bye yet. and all of them will tell you that, hey, this is the most beat up I've been in in my career. So I'm not buying this as a as an excuse. I mean, as my old man
Well, I
Eddie Murphy
mean,
used to
I
say,
don't even
"Come
know
on,
if it's so much
son."
an excuse. He probably shouldn't have played in several games in which he played. I don't know if you've watched, but you could tell that he was having a lot of trouble just doing basic things. He had a torn labrum coming into the season. His shoulder has been dislocated at least 3 times. Um, and now he's had 2 other injuries on top of that. So yeah, he's physically beaten up. I mean, that part's clearly true, and he's having
Eh,
trouble.
As he played in Cincinnati the last 2 seasons, beat up. Joe Burrow is beat up.
Yeah, well, right. Joe Burrow obviously would be like, yes, let me show you my Bruce collection. Yeah, I mean, it's not unique to him, um, but he clearly has taken a beating. I mean, that's not incorrect. I
No,
watch.
that's not incorrect, but that comes with the position. He's not Tom Brady. He doesn't. I mean, that he's not a guy that depends upon getting. He's not even a Big Ben that's going to get rid of the ball
Right,
in
right.
so
Now you're
many
right.
seconds.
He's a quarterback who is, when everything's right for him, he could be a top 12 quarterback. When everything's right, when the offensive line's right, when the receivers are right, the running game's clicking, he's a top 12 quarterback. This year he's probably just outside of the top 20. And yes, he has been really beaten up. I mean, all these things are all simultaneously true, James. Yes, he has been very thoroughly beaten up. At least he probably shouldn't have even played in a couple of games in which he did play. He probably should have not played. But you know how people are. You know how players are. They want to play through things even when they shouldn't.
Yes, sir. I do it. And like I said, I agree that he's been beaten up, but hey, you play quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Go ask Frank Ryan about getting beat up. But anyway,
Yeah, well,
so
right.
yeah, Jalen Hurts, and I will admit I got caught in the bind when Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers went down, so I had to pick him up for fantasy football. But Jalen Hurts, is he the Eagles quarterback of the future, or is he the Eagles quarterback of now?
Well, he's definitely the quarterback of now. I believe they will probably bring in a quarterback. The question is how good, right? A quarterback really bring in. I think they want to give him at least one more year. I think he gets some competition in camp, whether it be someone that they draft or a younger veteran that they look to sign. Josh Rosen is still out there for anyone who wants to bring him in. So I think they're going to go after
Wait a minute,
somebody.
Josh Rosen, isn't he the backup? I looked. He's the backup on somebody's roster I looked at last week.
Is he? I don't,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe he is,
yeah.
but
Josh Rosen is unavailable, I believe. Let me
I'd
see.
have to double check. But I mean, but it's only a 1 year contract, which means he's available as of next
Yes,
year.
yes.
Right, that's what I meant. So you wouldn't be bringing him right now. You're not changing anything now. Uh, I'm saying for the next training camp, I believe there'll be some competition, and I believe they'll bring in at least one veteran. And I could see, like I said, possibly a draft pick, probably not a first rounder. I don't think there's been a first rounder on a quarterback, partially because they have so many other needs on that team. Their offensive line needs help. Jason Kelsey's not going to play forever, and he's still their best offensive lineman. I think they still need to add another tackle on offense. They could definitely use another receiver. I mean, they have. I think they did hit, with Smith, but I think they're going to need another one. Their best
Um,
their best players on defense are also their oldest players on defense, which
Yeah,
is
I was going to ask you about that defense.
so. Yeah, that team needs an infusion of talent. I don't think they can afford to, just throw an early round draft pick on a quarterback with all the needs they have on the team.
Jerry Jones says that a win over Kansas City would be a hallmark win. Now, maybe the last year's Kansas City team, that I might say that, maybe the year before, but this team here looks vulnerable, human.
Mhm.
Is this Jerry just trying to hype up the Cowboys?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Jerry is the best salesman in the league, and has been since he bought the team from Clint Murchison. Right from that point forward, the number one, no doubt, best salesman in the NFL, and has been. That having been stated, Kansas City is going to start being Kansas City again at some point. Now, maybe not quite the level of dominance, but I would like to remind everyone. Anyone want to know who's now currently atop the standings in the AFC West? I mean, want to take a stab at it? Want to guess? It's the Chiefs. Numero uno. Right? Are in the driver's seat in the AFC West. So I know it's popular to say, oh my God, what's wrong with them? But they're on pace to go like 10-7 or 11-6. And which, is not quite what they did the last couple of years, right? But they still have a very good chance of winning their division, right? And if they win a couple playoff games, everyone will forget, right? Once again, that whole Men in Black memory erase thing. If they win a couple playoff games, right, and they're playing deep into the postseason, all this stuff will be forgotten.
Well, let's see. The Pats now are up 16 zip after that interception of Matty Ice. So the Pats rookie, Mr. Mac Jones, is he establishing his own niche here with the Pats? I mean, we kind of thought that it would be next
Well,
year
I mean,
before we
he's
depended
their
upon him.
starter. And yeah, I
Of
mean,
course.
I don't know. And he's going to be the starter. This is probably a playoff team. Like I don't understand what else you want from a rookie to get you to the playoffs. Like what's the question? Like what else would you want from a rookie starter at quarterback? This is a playoff team.
Is he a playoff quarterback or the Pats a playoff team? Or does he make the Pats a playoff team?
I mean, it's a little bit of both, but this team is not tremendously more talented than last year's team, right? It's slightly more talented than last year's team, but it's not way more talented. If you go position by position up and down the roster, it's a little bit better than last year's team. A little bit, but it's not a lot. So he's not the only difference, but he's one of the major differences. He operates the offense more efficiently than the offense was operated last year. And a lot of people said, oh, but look at the receiving talent. It's pretty much the same receivers, right? There's no superstar receiver on this team. They're getting it done with Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby. What's his name from NC State?
Jacoby Myers.
The occasional N'Keal Harry sighting. Gunnar Olszewski on occasion. A bunch of tight ends like DeGuara and what's his name they got from they signed, I guess, a couple of tight ends in free agency. But yeah, I mean it's and they still throw the ball to the running backs a lot. I think they still lead the league in running back targets, which is the most Patriots thing ever. But it's so much more efficient this year, right? His accuracy and efficiency is what's allowing this offense to operate maybe not exactly like it did under Brady, but fairly close in terms of just offensive efficiency.
Anybody got Matty Ice on their fantasy football team tonight? I hope not. Uh, but Bill, I divided Sunday's games into three categories, and of course, just by the way I uh, put them out there, you can tell it's very old school, back to the spaghetti western days. The
Yes, the
good,
good, the bad, and the ugly.
the good, the bad, and the just plain ugly.
Got
But
it.
so the good, the Chiefs dismantle the Raiders on both sides of the ball. You just spoke about the Chiefs retaking first place in the West.
Yep.
Uh, so your thoughts, the good.
The good of the upcoming games, you mean?
No, the good of the Chiefs coming back to
Oh,
dominate the Raiders on both
well, I
sides.
mean, the good is that the league is trying to make Patrick LeVon Mahomes II the face of the NFL, and that's hard to do if the Chiefs stink. So the Chiefs not stinking is good for the NFL as a whole, quite frankly. That's point number one amongst the good. And as they figure it out, right? Because teams are playing them not exactly the same way each week, but there's some similarities. You're seeing a lot of soft and off, too deep, and just rallying up and tackling. Well, and we still haven't seen Mahomes take off and run as much as he should have, because there's some two-man where if he just takes off, it's going to be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 yards, just free yards. He just takes off. And so if he becomes a little more aggressive about that, that'll help. If they decide to just be patient in the running game and just pound people, that'll help. And then obviously take what you're being given, create some matchups through motion and of course using the rub plays to get people free, especially Kelsey, who's really good at that stuff. There's no reason to doubt that this team is going to, like I said, going to right the ship and be good this season. And I think we're seeing that now.
The good. You talked about Patrick Mahomes, but a lot of the preseason talk, as far as the this year's MVP, was quarterback Josh Allen of the Bills. Well, the
Well,
Bills.
as you know, I predicted
Go ahead.
he would come back to earth this season. So I wasn't one of those people. I told anyone who would listen he was going to regress a little bit this year.
But they did prove that they were the best team in the state by dismantling the Jets.
They are the best team. Also the only team in the state. But yes, they are the best and the only team. Now the battle for New Jersey will be an interesting one. But yes, they are the best team in New York.
The Panthers, they clipped the Cards' wings without a healthy Kyle Murray.
Yep.
So when you
Both
look at the
teams.
Panthers, the good, the Panthers, getting a good win under their belts, but then again, how much does it mean? Well, does it show the vulnerability of the Cards without Kyle Murray?
Well, it's a combination of things. And once again, we always say this, but coaching matters. And some teams match up better against some teams than they do against other teams. You're trying, as a coach, to isolate and identify weaknesses that your team can exploit. And you got to see that live and in Technicolor, as they used to say. This is a team that struggles with certain things on defense, though I'd say they have a good defense, but you saw their weaknesses there, right, on defense. You saw where they're not great on defense. You saw that without the dynamic play extension element, their offense goes from being wow to right? I mean, still solid, still can be effective, but you're not getting all that that extra stuff that you get from someone who can extend plays and even just take off and pick up, those free access yards. That's not something that they have right now.
You're getting the sedan version, in other words.
Right, exactly. 4-door, yes. 4-door, automatic shift, 3-speed automatic, yes. The inline 6, 2-barrel carb.
Deebo Samuels, he displayed his jets as the 49ers took the took the Rams apart. You know, uh, I'm kind of glad that maybe Demetrius isn't here because in the words of Denny Green, Matt Stafford is he who we thought he was.
I would say yes. The 49ers have had the Rams, or I guess to be more specific, Shanahan has kind of had their number, right? McVay and Shanahan, who are friends, of course, but they're very similar guys in a lot of ways. Both were college wide receivers. Both come from football families. There's a long list of parallels between the two of them. And they think alike in a lot of ways. So it was, I won't say easy, because easy isn't the right term to use, but there were a lot of things that they see in each other that are very familiar, I guess would be good to put it. And he was able to use that to his team's advantage. He really can think similarly, right? And if I were coaching the Rams, I would do this, right? And I think every coach tries to do that, but some do it really well. He does it exceptionally well, right? He's able to get inside of the head to the point that, well, you saw, right? Right? You saw. That was him feeding his team a lot of, here's what's going to happen. Here's what they're going to do in this situation. And like I said, every coach tries to do it, but not every coach can do it. Particularly with that team, it's clear that he has a really strong understanding of what they like to do, when, and how they like to do it. Really strong.
Yeah, really strong. Okay, let's go on to the bad. The Dolphins actually hold the Ravens scoreless in the second half.
Yep. So, so you're
the Dolphins are really bad. There's no.
The Dolphins' defense is not really bad. The Dolphins' offense is really pedestrian, is the term I would use.
Okay,
pedestrian offense. But if you're able to contain Lamar Jackson, so's the Ravens' offense. We just talked about the Kyler Murray effect, right? And when Kyler's not there to extend plays or to pick up free yards with his feet, the offense is much less effective and dynamic. And for the Ravens, all the things that's said about Kyler Murray and all the things about how he makes things go and how much their offense feeds off of what he can do, all that stuff is truer of the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. The Ravens probably have a bottom 6, 7. Well, that might be changing if Rashad Bateman continues to develop. But we're talking about until the emergence of Rashad Bateman, a bottom 6, 7 receiving group, right? The offensive line isn't as good this year, or hasn't been as good this year as it was last year. And even on defense, you're starting to see some cracks. Still a good team. I think still a playoff team, but not quite as dominant as they've been in the past. I feel that that's fairly, obvious, frankly, if you've been watching the team, that there's, there's been yeah, there's been some cracks, some things where the team isn't quite as solid as it was.
I don't think that you have that fear that you used to have when you heard of the Ravens and you heard of that defense. Um, the Bucks drop a game to the Washington football team after
Yes.
Tom Brady
Now,
throws two
Wait a second. I'm not going to rub it in, but remember when I told everybody who would listen and people were talking about
Yes,
blowing?
you did.
No. Remember that? And I said, no, this is going to be a very close game. Taylor Heinicke's going to play very, very well. That defense is going to get right. And I didn't quite call for the actual upset, but I told you there's no way they cover. I think it was 9.5, and I laughed. I said, that's free money. Remember that when I said that 9.5 spread was free money when we talked about that game?
Yeah, but you told us that Buffalo game too when they were favored by 14. But you did call this one though. You definitely said that they wouldn't cover, and I'm not sure. I'd have to go back, but I know you might have even called for the upset. But
I chickened out on calling for the upset. I thought about it, then I got scared. I got scared. But I wanted to. Like in my heart, I wanted to. But I was like, say this out loud. And, I didn't want to have to eat the crow. But I did have a feeling that the Tampa was going to lose. First of all, Tampa is not as good as they were last year. I said that before, and I meant it. They are not as good as they were last year, and it was ridiculous to expect them to be as good as they were last year. Why would you believe that? Why would you think that would happen? It's almost impossible to stay at that level, even if you have a younger team. And this is not a young team. So for older teams, and we've talked about this with other older teams, it's very difficult to stay at that level. But yes, I wasn't surprised at all.
What about the Eagles? They knocked off the Broncos. Very close game. What was it, 23-21?
Right. And they're very evenly matched teams. I mean, those are teams that are not far apart in my mind anyway. Those are similar teams. They have similar strengths, similar weaknesses. Both teams have had some significant injuries, but a lot of teams have by this point in the season. So if you were to take the best players from both teams and kind of, now you've got something, right? If you take the best players from both teams and kind of jimble them together, now you've got something. You take Cortland Sutton off of the Ravens, you drop him in the Eagles lineup, you could really do something, if you could get the right players of the two teams and mix them together. The problem is that you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that, to play, roster jumble with the two teams. The Eagles are figuring out their running game. Remember their running game last year, which was, basically just Jalen Hurts. They're figuring out that they have running backs, and some of them are good. I've never understood why they don't use Boston Scott more. As you know, I've been banging the drum for Boston Scott for probably 2 years now. I looked at him when he was in college at Louisiana Tech and said, this guy is Darren Sproles. Like, this is a terrific change of pace back. Powerful, fast, really good hands. If they were to make sure he gets 8 to 12 touches a game, their offense would be much more interesting and dynamic. I don't know why they haven't figured this out yet, but he got more touches in this game, and you saw what he could do.
Yeah, Boston's he is one that a lot of fantasy players have been waiting for him to come of age also. And I think it's just...
Well, the only thing stopping him is the Eagles.
Well, yeah, the system.
The Eagles put him in.
Right. That's the only thing. Let's see. The Colts scored 3 points in the second half to hold off the Jaguars. Another ugly game. Well, bad game, not ugly, but bad.
Yeah, well, it was a bad or maybe even ugly game, or however you want to describe it. But the Colts found a way to win a game that they probably shouldn't have won. And the Jaguars, like many bad teams, found a way to lose a game they probably should not have lost. That's what bad teams do.
Okay. another field goal scored by the Patriots. So let's get to the just plain ugly. Last week, the Cowboys against the Falcons. What was that? 44-3, 40. Some. Hey, you need an abacus to catch up with that. But what was your thoughts on that? I thought that was just a plain ugly game.
Well,
Along with the one tonight, that's not very pretty either. But we didn't talk about that
yeah.
one. So go ahead. Are the Falcons just pathetic, or what? I mean, when
It's
you
a
look at them
combination
on
of things.
when you look at them on paper, they have some very good pieces. Russell Gage, Matty Ice, of course, is very unpredictable, but they do have some offensive pieces. The line, of course, needs some readjustments. They have without without Cordell, they have no running game tonight, of course.
Right.
But I I have to just blame a lot of this on the decline of Matty Ice.
Well, I mean, you can do that if you want to, but the whole team has not played well. Their offensive line has been bad all season. As you mentioned, Cordell Patterson sort of rescued their running game, but was hurt tonight. Their defense has not exactly been impressive. They don't get consistent pass rush. They're not great against the run. They've got one or two nice pieces in their secondary. I mean, I'm not sure even if Matty Ice is playing at like a Pro Bowl level, they probably win a couple more games. But when your defense can't really stop people and you can't get the ball back, it's hard to score, right? That's one thing. And I mean, there's nothing about the team where you point to and say, oh, they're great at this, right? What's the thing they're great at? And I'll just say it. People started trying to push up Calvin Ridley, which often happens. It happened with Juju Smith-Schuster. It happens with a lot of number two receivers who are very productive and even outproducing the quote-unquote number one. But one of the reasons the number two is outproducing the quote-unquote number one is that the quote-unquote number one is there, taking very often, if it's a man-to-man situation, taking the other team's best man cover corner. And in zone, very often, the safety is rotated over to their side, right? If there's a single deep safety, they're cheating to their side. So when, of course, injuries also derailed, obviously, Calvin Ridley, but who's the other receiver, right? And that's been the real challenge for them this year is Kyle Pitts, I guess, but he's technically speaking a tight end, but they don't have a lot of the things that good teams have. I mean, this is that clear. They don't have that. They other than a wide receiver turned running back, they've struggled to run the football. They have not been able to establish that other receiver. Once again, unless you want to count tight end Kyle Pitts, they struggle to stop good offenses and even sometimes struggling to stop average offenses, but they definitely struggle to stop good offenses. They have problems giving up big plays, both in the run and the pass game. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, you can blame Matty Ice if you want to, because people always want to blame quarterbacks, even when it has nothing to do with the quarterback. People blame him anyway. And yes, he's having a down year from last year, but even if he was playing lights out, this team wouldn't be good.
Did he just throw another INT? Did he just throw another INT? Did he go for the trifecta tonight?
Well, I don't think he's. Oh, you're right. That is Josh Rosen. Yeah, you're right. Josh Rosen's. That was an INT, but it wasn't Matty Ice. That was Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I knew Josh Rosen was playing for. He was the backer for someone. I couldn't figure out who it was. Okay, Matty Ice. So now we know. Okay, Russell Wilson back for the Seahawks, but gets shut out to the Packers. Uh, I mean, 17-0. Russell held to a goose egg. You could tell, you could see the rust, but you know,
Yes.
I think it wasn't just Russell that contributed to this. Are the Seahawks just showing us that they're just playing? Well, I can't say bad, but they are. They do seem to be ugly.
So they're in obviously an extremely tough situation because the Cardinals, the Rams. I mean, like it's a tough situation. There's not a lot of wiggle room, space. Like where's the soft spot to land? I mean, thus far the soft spot, at least in the NFC West, has been the Seattle Seahawks because the Rams are a very good team, as are the Cardinals, are a really, really, really good team. I mean, it's difficult to finding wins is a challenge for them because they play a tough schedule. They have, just like a lot of teams, have had a lot of injuries at key positions. Their offensive line still isn't good. They haven't been able to establish a running game. Um, what else to tell you about this team? I mean, they've got
Just
problems.
just plain ugly.
So it's going to be a fight for them, a fight, an absolute fight for them to get anywhere, to establish anything, to get anything done.
Yeah, if the other two teams above them just play 500 ball, there's a good
Yep.
chance. So let's
I
talk
mean,
about the Titans.
San Francisco is an odd case because they're capable of looking good, but they're not really good. They're just capable of looking good. They're a team that's in a dogfight, but they should
But
make the playoffs. So there's two definite slam dunk playoff teams above them. And then Seattle and the 49ers are trying to figure things out.
well, they'll both be on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But
Correct.
let's talk about the Titans. It They hold on to a win by having a second half that consisted totally of 4 field goals by both teams.
Yep. Which was all they needed.
So, what do you think about the Titans without Derrick Henry? Even though they found a way to maintain their winning ways.
Yeah, well, I once again, I called this. I mean, this is not something that surprised me. I said that people who are just pretending like Derrick Henry's the be all and end all are forgetting that no matter how talented a running back is, the only way that he can get anything done is if other things are happening around him, including the offensive line executing. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a team winning. It's never one player, whether it's a quarterback, a running back, a defensive end, whatever. This isn't basketball, right? You only play either offense or defense. One player can only affect. I mean, you can affect things going on your side of the football, but even the most influential offensive player is really only affecting offense, and even the most influential defensive player is only affecting defense. And I guess you can throw special teams in there, for luck. But this is a good football team. It's not just Derrick Henry. Like I said this before, this is not news, or it shouldn't be. And
Okay.
it doesn't hurt that they're in a division where they basically have been able to run away and hide. I think they've clinched their division already or something. So, or close to it. I think maybe it may
Right.
take more win or something, but they've practically clinched.
I think are they 3 games ahead or 4 games ahead in their division? something like that. I know it's
whatever the number is, it's more than enough.
Yeah, yeah. Another team that can play 500 ball practically and win that division. Uh, but let's get to the bridesmaid of just plain ugly. You play without your supposedly number one quarterback. You're playing the worst team record wise in the NFL. You get down in field goal position and you find a way to lose the game. So, also during this weekend, every team in your division loses. Every
Yep.
team.
Yep.
You have a chance to pick up a full game.
Yep. It was a perfect opportunity.
Just plain ugly.
Well, so Demetrius would be, I guess, pleased to know that it will now be impossible for them to lose 17 games. The Lions, we now know definitively, will not lose 17 games. They will not set a new NFL record. Remember when I told you kept asking why they kept running Big Ben out there, James? And I said, because they know what they have in their quarterback room. Remember when I told you that?
But strangely enough, I cannot place this blame as much as I want to on Mason Rudolph.
Well, it's always team winning, losing. No, I'm agreeing with you there.
Mason did everything that he was supposed to do to win this game. Now, granted, maybe the game should not have been this close, but for what we knew he was, Mason did everything that I would say that was in his possibility to win this game.
He played a solid.
Yes, he played a. I didn't say he played an outstanding game because he's not an outstanding quarterback, but he played a solid game, and it was because of the fire moves. I mean, you can plainly blame this interception on fire moves. This was not on Mason. The ball was where it's supposed to be. Fire moves caught the ball and fumbled it afterwards.
Yes, that is correct. So, yeah, there's some things to not like about lots of the things that you saw that there were some silly penalties on defense. There were some non-penalties that were called penalties.
We won't get into refs.
I mean, there's a lot
of. That's why I didn't even talk about Texas Tech tonight. We won't even get into refs. Whether it's college football, NBA basketball, we'll just leave the refs alone tonight. We'll give them a break.
Yeah, so there was a lot of, there were many opportunities for each team to win that game. And it's a testament, obviously, to, one, both defenses really showed up with a really, really good game plan and executed those game plans at a high level. And the offenses clearly, in both cases, struggled mightily to get what normally would be and maybe even should be some fairly simple things executed. Did not always do a good job of executing those what should be fairly easy, fairly simple things done. So you're right. We cannot put, once again, I always believe in winning and losing as a team. Mason Rudolph played a solid enough game. I'm not disagreeing with that. However, there were opportunities for some big plays to be made that weren't made because he either didn't see them or couldn't deliver the ball in such a way that that big play was a big play. But, once again, both teams had multiple chances to win the game, and neither team could get that done. It really was, if you I joked with somebody, it's like, hey, you set your television to 1959, right? It was a ability to, for those who maybe you don't like all that offensive stuff, you don't like teams scoring at will, this is the game to wash all that away for you. And to remind you what football used to look like before offenses could just go wherever they want, do whatever they wanted to do.
My goodness. Who would have thought the New England Patriots would lead the NFL with 18 interceptions at this point in the season, and not even
Well, they
have
have they have one of the great defensive minds in the history of football. They have J.C. Jackson. They have their entire at least one of the McCourty brothers. Like they have the best part of their team is their secondary, and they have a all-time great defensive mind as their head coach. Also, they play some bad offenses. I mean, it lines up perfectly. You get to play the Jets twice. You get to play the Miami Dolphins a couple of times. I mean, there's a lot of things that they get to that play into this that would indicate that they should have a good chance of getting a lot of interception. This should not be a surprise, actually.
Well, hey, Bill, as always, man, good spending these last couple hours with you. Why don't you give us your final thoughts for tonight? And,
okay. So, since it's shameless plug season, I'm in the process of posting the players of the week for last week at all levels of college football. That includes NAIA, Division III, Division II, FCS, and FBS on Nuts and Bolts Sports. That'll go live maybe later tonight, but if not, by early tomorrow morning. Then I'll have my Saturday superlatives. That'll go live at some point tomorrow, looking back at actually I guess a couple weeks. I'm a couple weeks in arrears on those. So I owe you guys some more of those. They'll be coming out. A non-sports article I'm writing, which I think I may have mentioned before, but I can't remember if I did or didn't, which deals with white supremacist insurrections. So that'll be on Around the Block, Black History.
Yeah, we missed you Monday, but that's it.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling I wouldn't be able to make that Monday. I should be able to make the next Monday, though.
We should be talking about, unless something happens this weekend, we should still be talking about the tears of Mr. Rittenhouse. And of course, we'll be talking about the organized lynching of Mr. Arbery.
Right, Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah. So, if you want to get involved in those conversations,
I should be able to make it this Monday. Yes.
Yeah. Excuse me. So go ahead with your final thoughts.
And I will turn back to Kyle Rittenhouse for my final thoughts. Whatever the outcome of the case, and we're all rather frightened, nervous, concerned, pick a term, with what that outcome will be. As I've said many times before, I am not anti-gun, right? I mean, you and I both know how much fun having a firearm can be. I understand the allure of them, right? Very much understand the allure of them. And when you think about the whole situation, how it played out, what's going on, and how it happened, and how this young man who has this weapon that was purchased for him by a quote unquote shadow buyer or whatever term you want to use, who then transferred this weapon to him, a weapon he then takes with him across state lines to apparently, according to him, to render aid. That was the story, I guess, that he was going there to do, supposedly, despite the fact that he took no medical supplies of any type with him, unless he was planning to cauterize the wounds by, getting the muzzle, by firing a few shots and then slapping it against someone's wound. I mean,
he took a basic medical kit with him, a medical bag, not in the sense that we know it as a medical kit, but as a civilian medical bag. So, if I got burned or or maybe needed some direct pressure to stop a wound, or as he said during his testimony, someone with a sprained ankle. Uh, you know,
Okay.
so
What was his plan? To find out who might have a sprained ankle, and
some burn ointment. I mean, it's possible that their hands grabbed the barrel. Maybe they. I'm just saying. I'm just.
why not? There's clearly a breakdown in several portions of not our society, but our criminal justice system. And a lot of people have been calling me and DMing me, whatever, saying, I can't believe the judge did this. I can't believe the judge did that. This is not new. All of this is happening. It's happened in lots of other cases. You just didn't know about it, right? How do you think all those things that
If
happened
you had just lived 10 years longer, or maybe read 2 more books, you might have found,
So none of the things that have happened in this trial, whatever you might think of them, are new, right? Every single thing you've seen, no matter how surprising or mind-boggling or whatever, are things that have happened in several other trials that you just didn't happen to know about. Doesn't make it okay. In fact, it makes it the opposite of okay. The fact that it's more common than you might think is worse, not better. But my final thought is that I hope that the outrage that people are, whatever the outcome, that people are beginning to feel watching how this trial is playing out, will translate into people focusing on getting criminal justice reforms passed. Because we've had a broken criminal justice system for, well, ever, right, since the beginning. It has at no point been fair or equal. I'm not going to go down the whole cash bail / holding people for ransom aspect of our criminal justice system, and how you automatically have a better chance of winning if you're able to assist more in your own defense because you're not sitting in jail, and a whole bunch of other things that disadvantage poor people and give advantage to people of means in our criminal justice system. Like I said, I do hope that all the stuff that people are watching, I hope that it doesn't just make them mad. They don't just post, I hope they aren't just Twitter activists. I hope they aren't just Facebook activists or Instagram activists. I hope they will begin to put pressure on their state, federal, and local representatives to push for criminal justice reform at all levels of our criminal justice system. That is my final thought.
Well, thank you as always, Bill. Look forward to talking to you this Saturday. You have a great night, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it as well. Thank you so very much. You're gone already, Jeffrey Fan. It was great having you as well. I enjoy it every time we have him on.
Yeah, and Demetrius, hey man, be safe out there. I'll talk to you Saturday. No, actually, I'll talk to you next week after those wounds have healed a little bit. So have a great night. Have a great weekend, and go Buckeyes.